Hello. Oh my God. Can everyone hear me fine? Good, good, good. A few housekeeping rules before we begin. Bathrooms, if you need it, is through these doors to your left. And if you get hungry or thirsty, plenty of snacks and food in the back. Feel free to just get up and go. That being said, welcome everyone to the second annual Mentoringship wrap-up event. I want to thank you all for coming today, and more importantly, thank you all for your time that you spent as mentors and mentees. I hope the relationship you've built has been enriched your lives and been fulfilled. My name is Gene Tavara, and my co-chair, Sharon Thompson, would like to welcome you all. I want to give great thanks to the committee members, Joseph, Shane, Brandon, Richard, Patty, and my beautiful wife, Susanna, for the work we've done behind the scenes to make this program successful, in my opinion. I didn't say last names because I don't want to mess any last names up. So I would be remiss if I do not thank Stella and John for your leadership and guidance that you've done throughout this year. Without you, obviously, we would not be here today. We have a great program for you today. Today we're going to have a guest speaker, Beth Handler Grunt. Did I say that name right? Close enough? A for effort. Sharon's going to do a better job than I am, so don't worry about that. and we're going to thank you, the mentors and mentees. So without further ado, Sharon.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to piggyback on Gene and just say thank everyone for coming out and actually thanking everyone for becoming mentors and mentees. It means a lot to us as far as this mentoring program, that so many of you were willing to give your time and effort to help mold and shape the lives of college students going into the career. So you should give yourselves a round of applause because you did an excellent job, and we thank you. So with that said, I get to introduce the lovely guest speaker tonight, Beth Handler Grunt. Is that correct? Okay, I'm a teacher. Founder of The Next Step. Next Great Step is a dynamic leader, advisor, and facilitator who has extensive experience advising top business leaders, universities, and individuals. Next Great Step addresses the challenges faced by college students, graduates, and young professionals on how to stand out and compete for jobs. In this difficult market, Ms. Handler Grunt has a strong track record of her clients getting hired after working with the Next Great Step process. Ms. Handler Grunt has been featured in NJ Biz Magazine, Zip Recruiter, NerdWallet, and multiple other publications. We're going to encourage you that after Ms. Handler Grunt does her presentation, that you make sure that you connect with this individual who has a wealth of knowledge that we're trying to give to you as mentors and mentees. So without further ado, we'd like to welcome our guest speaker for the evening, Ms. Handler Grunt. Miss Beth.
All right, so I'm looking for the remote for the, oh, thank you. I'm going to take this out. I'm a talker, so I don't like to be behind the podium. If it's too loud, just let me know. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm really excited to be here. Great opportunity. What a fantastic idea and initiative to bring mentors and mentees together. Can I just get a sense from a show of hands how many mentors we have in the room? Oh, wow, fantastic. And mentees? Wonderful, wonderful. I think it's fantastic that you're both committing the time to work with each other. I think it's phenomenal. So tonight, my focus is helping both the mentees and the mentors and thinking about how do you take that next step? You're in college, you're maybe getting ready to graduate, or you're trying to figure out where you are in your college career of what do I do from here? So we'll talk about that. Give you a little bit about me, and then the rest of the night we're going to talk about you. So as was stated before, I have this business, and I'll tell you how it came to be a few years ago. Prior to running this startup, in essence, I was at a boutique management consulting firm where we did strategic planning and sales performance for Fortune 500 executives, which was a phenomenal learning experience. And prior to that, I was in the telecom sector with AT&T, Lucent, and Avaya in sales and sales leadership roles. I also serve on some boards, so I actually did my graduate work at Seton Hall. Sorry about that, another nearby school. I do some pro bono work for a great organization that provides some guidance to those students who are very much in need, called Grad Life Choices, and I've done lots of speaking at local universities, and as you see, I've been published and been in some publications. I'll tell you briefly about how this came to be. In my role as guiding executives, a lot of times we'd have conversations around hiring. And executives would say to us, you know, I would really love to bring in a recent grad. They're energetic, they have a great attitude, but they don't get it. They don't fully understand the scope of the problems that we have that we're trying to address, and I don't have the time to hold their hands. I'm of the age where I have lots of friends whose students are in college, or I have lots of students that I know in college and say, I don't get it either. I went to a good school, I worked hard, I had good grades, I had good internships. Why can't I get a job? I don't understand. So what I did was, that the same techniques that we teach executives and CEOs about how do you focus on what you're going to be good at, how do you differentiate yourself and compete in the market, how do you articulate your value, those same techniques I bring to students in a very simple way. And that's how this business got started. So this is also kind of the third chapter in my career, is that I am an entrepreneur, which I was not prior. So I have learned a lot in this process of working for others, advising others, and now Lauren and I, we are kind of a startup of two, and we are doing it all and bringing this to students because it's a really, really important and needed. So that's just enough about me. I want to hear more about you. So this is an interactive presentation. I don't really like to speak at you all night. I want to really hear about you and what you're thinking. But I'd like to get some ideas, and I have a whiteboard I'd like to put some of your thoughts down. Is tell me from the mentees, for those who are in school or getting ready to graduate, what are you hoping to achieve with your degree? What do you think you're going to get from it? Come on, someone has to volunteer. Over here in the blue. Stephen, thank you. Okay, wonderful. And I'm just going to jot some of these down on the whiteboard. I'd like to, so everyone can see. Wonderful. Who else? Saw some other hands before. What else do you hope to get out of your degree? Get a well-paying job? Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. I saw another hand over here. Okay, so get a good job with a good company and get good internships while you're in school. Over here you had getting a teacher's job, another person in education. Yes. Okay. Wonderful. So you want to be able to get a medical degree, so not necessarily be an MD, or do you want to be an MD? Wonderful. So be able to be a medical examiner by having your concentration in pathology. Excellent. Any others? So those are fantastic. I mean, everyone has different interests and different goals and aspirations. Of course, that whole idea of, can I get a good job and can I be financially independent where I don't have to rely on someone else to help fund my education or being able to pay back the bank for any loans that I have. But then comes the other side. What do you worry about the most? I mean, these could be, sorry, we have one more question. So it could be similar, but what are your biggest concerns after you graduate? Not finding a job. Or not using your degree, so maybe going to school and studying something, but then you feel like, I'm not sure if this is the right thing. Over here. settling. Settling for a job and you don't feel like you're having fun. Who said jobs are fun? No. Over here, yes. So technology taking over the economy or potentially taking over jobs that you could potentially look for, but now maybe technology would take that over. Yes. Loans. Loans. It is a reality. And for mentors and mentees, it's an issue. The mentors are still paying back the loans. These are legitimate concerns, absolutely. And you, like all the other college students across the country, feel this same concern of how do I take my degree and really get to what I want? Yes. So making sure your resume stands out. How do I stand out, differentiate myself? Great point. Yeah, absolutely. Keeping up with the competition. And you know who else is competition? Every person in this room. You all compete with each other, right? Look to the right and left, and it's a little like, oh, you want to go for the same job I do? You're going to that interview tomorrow that I'm going to? Yeah, it happens. It happens. Yeah, over here. Fear of failure. That's a big one. Anyone else feel that way? Everyone's all got it figured out. Yeah, it's scary. It's scary. Just because you go to college doesn't mean you have all the answers. Although people would expect and sometimes think that, but it's not the case. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. The comment was fear of being stagnant, that you're not learning enough, you're not staying current, you're not up on what the latest technology or knowledge is. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Tell me, I'm going to look at your name. Is it Greg? Gene, thank you for writing that. You bring up some really... I didn't say he was done for the night. No, I'm just joking. There'll be other opportunities. These are great points. And it's not so easy. And so I had thought about it as well as I work with lots and lots of students and recent grads and kind of had similar topics that came up. And this is what I see. So similar to what you said, there are no guarantees. Just because you go to school and you do well and you have internships and you talk to people and you feel like you put yourself out there, it doesn't guarantee the job when you graduate. Even more, sometimes there's that feeling of I studied something in a specific area and now I feel like I'm not so sure I want to pursue a job in that area. How do I change paths when my degree is in something else? Competition, you already brought it up. They're sitting next to you. Do you know that this May, 1.8 million students will graduate college? By the way, that happens every year. So 1.8 million students graduate college in the United States every year. It's a lot of competition. Could be a little overwhelming, so absolutely that's a reality. And the other idea we talked about earlier is just your next career move is not clear. Am I current? Am I not stale? Do I know what is needed? So these are all the realities of what you're facing is valid. So what do you do about it? What do you do about it? So tonight, I'd like to talk to you about two ideas that could help you maybe feel a little bit more focused and a little bit more confident about how you move forward. The first idea is about having a strategy. That sounds very consulting-like. It's actually very simple. It's really answering a couple of key questions. It's knowing what skills you bring to the market and who you want to bring them to. And we're going to talk about that. And I'll actually show an example of a student that I worked with and how we created a strategy for him. The other one is, well, once you have it figured out, let's just fast forward and say, you're comfortable with what you studied, you feel like you know what you want to do. What do you say when you show up to talk to someone about it? Whether it's coffee, a mentor, an informational interview, or the actual interview. What are you saying in these conversations? Because the reality is, many people make decisions about you not so much based on your resume. It's more about what you say and how you say it. And a lot of you shake your head because you might have experienced that already. So we'll talk about a technique that I like to share with students about how you can do that in a really effective way. And as we go along, please, if you have questions, stop and ask. Or if you don't understand or you want clarity or you want to talk about it more, please do so. But this will be continue to be interactive. So strategy, it's actually really 4 questions, but we're going to focus on the first one, and I'll step you through them real briefly. The first one is, what skills do I bring to the market? What am I really good at? What am I the most competent at? Sometimes it may not be what you studied in college, and that's okay. But understanding that is really important, and we'll talk about how you refine that. Then knowing, well, who do I want to bring my skills to? You live in New Jersey, but maybe you want to go to California. Do you want to be in finance? Do you want to be in marketing? Do you want to be in a certain type of role, a title? How do you start narrowing down the search? If you were going to go on and log on Indeed and click your filter, what are you clicking? How do you even know what to choose? Yes. Mm-hmm. So it's a great question. So just repeats, everyone heard. So he's interested in journalism and wants to potentially go overseas and bring and focus on a career abroad in that area. And how do you do it? I don't know if I can answer that in like 30 seconds or less. Part of it is being clear about what are you doing that because you're afraid you can't find a job here, or is it as a backup to not finding a job here? So we'll talk about that in just a moment. It's getting focused about what is it that you want to do. Forget about how hard you think it is or whether there's a lot of jobs there or not. Part of it is become smart about it. You have to talk to people who are in those areas. You have to educate yourself. You have to read trade journals. You have to give yourself a mini class on how to figure this out. And some of it primarily through networking. So I'm probably not giving the best clear answer. It takes a little time to figure out, but we're going to step through a couple components that might be a little more apparent. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and actually, there's another part of the strategy. I'll kind of explain a little further. It'll make more sense about how you narrow that down. So that's good news. It's good news. Okay, so the who will you bring your skills to? Then there's 2 other things to think about. When you look at potentially looking for a company or a person, understanding why they are hiring is really important. Because either something really great is happening or something really bad is happening. And knowing which one can really impact your decision where you get to make some choices as opposed to the other person making the choices for you. And the last question is, how do you compete? How do you differentiate yourself? I'm not going to be able to fully get into that this evening, but you'll see a little bit through the skills in this other student example. I'm going to show you how he did that. So let me talk about this idea of your skills, because all of you have lots of skills. Lots of things that you can do, that you've learned, that you've acquired, that you've grown up in doing in certain ways. So how do you narrow that down? Because if someone says to you, tell me about your skills, are you going to give them a list of 20 things? You're going to lose them after like 3. So let me give you a concept of how you think about your skills. Oh, you know what? And I'll tell you. soon as I tell you about Brian. Sorry about that. So Brian is a student that I work with actually last year, as he's going to graduate this coming May. And he's at Quinnipiac and he's studying marketing. And we worked together last summer to help him get an internship for his junior year. And now we're working together to get a job for when he graduates. So Brian has a nice list of skills. He has had different experiences, whether through class, part-time internships, co-ops that he's done at school, and he knows a lot of different things. He knows how to work in Salesforce.com, which is a sales automation program. He knows how to work hard. He's urgent with his time and gets things done quickly. He's learned how to cold call and do lead generation. So you'll notice that there's a combination of things that I would call hard skills and soft skills. So when you tell somebody, I'm hardworking, I'm reliable, I'm responsible, I'm trustworthy, those are all skills, I'd call them attributes, or something that's a little more soft. Knowing Excel, or knowing a program, or knowing how to analyze, that's a harder skill. I'm not gonna say one is real and one is not, but I always suggest trying to focus on the hard skills, because you can always supplement how you talk about it by saying, I understand how to use Excel and I can do VLOOKUP tables and I'm extremely efficient and I'm extremely time urgent and I get things done quickly. So you want to think about that. So the idea is, how do you translate all these skills that you have to what an employer needs, is looking for? But more importantly, how do you answer the question, tell me about yourself? How do you answer that question? And this is the thinking process to narrow down these skills, because all of you have this list in different capacities. This is what I meant to talk about earlier. So this is the thinking process. The idea is to get your skills into what I call core. Core are those things that you are the most competent, the most skilled at, and you probably enjoy doing it the most. And this is how you start to allocate your time. Because whether you are a student trying to balance looking for an internship, or someone who's about to graduate figuring out, well, how am I spending my days? Core is where you are going to spend most of your time pursuing opportunities that leverage the skills that you are best at. As opposed to saying to someone, I'll do anything, and I will do it. I can do any job, and I'll do it for anyone. Most employers actually don't really want that. They want you to say, I'm good at this, and I can do this really well, and I can do this really well for you, and here's the reasons why. They want a more concentrated and focused answer, and this is an idea of how you can get more focused. Near core is exactly what it sounds like. It's secondary. So these are other things that you're good at. You also are good at these things. Maybe you won't spend as much time pursuing career opportunities in it, but if it comes along, it's something you're absolutely open to. Outfield. Here's my example for outfield. You studied education, and you're thinking you want to be a teacher, and you want to stay in the New Jersey area. And someone says to you, I have the best job opportunity for you, but it's in California, and it's to work with this great accounting firm, and you should definitely go talk to them. You always have the opportunity. There will be distractions. You will have friends and family and other people say, you'd be really great at this. And not that you should disregard it. It's just you have to be true to yourself of, is this what I want? Did I study this? Am I good at this? You can always pursue outfield opportunities, but there's only 100%. You don't have 110 or 120 of your time. Is that if you start pursuing things that are not really what you're good at and not really what you want, then you're taking away from the areas that you really want to pursue. Does this make sense? So the idea, what I come down to core is, I like the number 3. It's easy to remember that you should have 3 core skills, maybe 4. And maybe if you've been in the workforce longer, you can have 1 or 2 more, but really, people can only remember things in 3s. Try me, trust me, I've tried it many, many times. So in Brian's case, we said, how do we take this list of all of these skills and get it down to 3? And the way we distill it is that you have to look at, if I say I'm good at something, if I say I know how to analyze data, I can't just say I know how to analyze data. I have to show you that I'm competent at it, and I have a proven experience where I actually did it. So in order to have something be core, you have to have actually proven that you've done this, and you can demonstrate that you're competent at it. So when looking at all his experiences and skills, we came down to these three. He knows how to solve problems, he knows how to research and analyze information, and he understands how to collaborate with others to create a result. Now, you'll notice those exact words were not on the previous slide in terms of his skills. You have to sometimes you group things together. Sometimes you take a look at, I know how to sell, our sales skills, so you can combine cold calling and sales promotion and lead gen. But ultimately, you want to get down to three. And I'll kind of go one step further. So what do you tell somebody? In Brian's example, let's pick analytical. He says, I'm analytical. How do I know? How can he prove it to an employer that he's analytical? Well, I always like to have a little example. And an example that's really clear and really concise and usually having measurable impact of what you did. So he was an intern at Intronis. I don't know what Intronis is, so always make sure you tell somebody what this is. I always like to say, assume the person you're talking to is not so smart or they don't know what the company was. Sometimes we have a habit, I'll say me too, of jumping in the middle of our story, but they don't really understand what we were first doing. So just give a little bit of, this is what the company did. They did cloud backup and data security. Okay, now I know what they did. Then get into, I like to use the phrase, I was tasked with. What were you assigned to do? He was assigned to use Salesforce.com, this sales automation tool, to assess if there were potential, they probably bought some databases and they had to look through the list and say, okay, do these meet the criteria of what we'd look for clients? So he did that. He accomplished, what did you accomplish out of your experiences? Not just, I filed papers, I waited on tables. Think about, what did you do to help that business accomplish something? In this case, he came up with a list of 300 prospects. So now he's quantifying his results. And as a result, after a 3-month internship, he was able to help target 1,000 new prospects. So I know in a very quick, short, and concise way what he did, what he was tasked with, and what he accomplished. And why is that important to me as an employer? Why do I care about this? Anyone? It's transferable. You can do it for me. You can do it for me. If you did it for someone else, you can do it for me. So that's just an example of how you kind of go from this long laundry list of skills to hopefully 3 core skills, and then having an example ready to talk about of how you demonstrated, because it's very impactful. And this is not always so clear on your resume. I mean, I would recommend your resume have as much quantifiable results, but in the conversation, this is how you grab someone's attention. Any questions about this piece? Does this make sense? Does this resonate? Okay. So that's a little bit about your skills and how you go from there. Yeah. I think that's a great point. Now, I'm not telling you that you shouldn't have a really positive attitude when you say it. You know, we didn't say, like, don't say it like you're, yeah, I had 300 prospects and it was really. Absolutely, I think showing enthusiasm and wanting it, people want you to want to be there. But it can't be superficial. It can't be like, I really, really want to work for you. Well, why? Well, you better have a pretty good answer why. It shouldn't be like, well, I just love Facebook and you're the best company ever. You have to have something. You have to read the paper. You have to read a press release. You need to have thought through, I have a skill. I mean, we don't have time, but ultimately, how can you solve a problem for a company? That's what companies want. They got a lot of problems. Honestly, not that they don't care about you, but they're so worried about, I have to make this deadline. I have to meet this budget. I have to meet all these requirements. How can you come in and make their life easier? And that's why someone wants to hire you. And if you do it with a smile and a great attitude, a bonus. But I think it's a good point. I think you just need to blend the two together. Did you have a question? Sure. That's a great question. So the question is, should you act aggressive, and would people take it the wrong way? I think you need to walk a fine line. There's no right or wrong answer. Depends on what the job is. If you're going for a sales job, you have to show that you can be assertive and maybe more aggressive. If you're going for more of a job that might be a more back office related, and I think it just depends. I think you have to really listen and read who you're talking to and get a sense for how it's going. Now, the next piece I'll talk about is how you are in more control of the conversation and how you stay in more control, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're aggressive in doing it. So let me maybe move on, and I think that's a great question, and we'll come back to it if I didn't answer it at the end. Is that okay? Yeah. So that's a great question. So he said the company is trying to pitch you to come and says this is a great role for you. And one of the things that I always suggest is saying that sounds really interesting, but I would like to speak to someone who works here right now or who's doing the exact job that I would be doing right now. So you have, especially if they want you, you have every right to say, you know, before I make a decision, I'd really like to talk to at least a few people who do the job so I can have a candid conversation about what it's really like to be here. And you need to educate yourself and read reviews on Glassdoor and things like that. Yeah. A 100%. You're like my plant for the next section of the talk. It's exactly what I'm about to talk about next. Yeah. 100%. This is not an interview should not be you coming in and feeling like, okay, whatever they ask me, I'm just going to wait and receive it. It's like the opposite of, I have a plan, I know what I'm going to say, and I know what I want to ask. And yes, I'm going to answer their questions, but you know how you're going to answer and what you're going to do. It's like you have a plan for that. Sure. Sure. 100%. I mean, it is very important to have other things other than school, but you don't have to go crazy. I mean, it can be a part-time job. I don't care if you're working at a food stand. I mean, you can learn something from every experience. It's just a matter of how you communicate about it and talk about it. All right? All right, let me move on. And John, I'm looking at you. Am I okay on time? Because I know people are asking questions. We're a little long. Okay. So the other part that we talked about was this execution. So when you have a meeting with someone, and I say meeting, phone call, video call, informational interview, real interview, coffee with a family friend, how do you prepare? Do you wing it? Just say like, I'll just see how it goes. Who's never said, I'll just see how it goes? Okay. Or how do you plan ahead to think about what is the outcome that you want? So here's this concept that I'll share with you. The concept is called the 3 A's. And here are 3 things to think about. Before you meet with anybody, you always want to think about, when I finish this conversation, when I finish this meeting, phone call, whatever it might be, what would I like the outcome to be? Now, if you're meeting someone for the first time, it may not always be hire me. That may not be a realistic. But thinking, what could I get that person to do? We're so used to taking all the to-dos ourselves. I'll follow up. I'll send them my resume. I'll give them this. What can you ask that person to do? So the idea is, what do you want the other person to do or agree to do after the meeting? Well, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, we're going to get to the actual ideas of what to do. But this whole concept of going in with what's the end game? It's not just, I'm just going to go, we're going to have a little chat, I'm going to tell them about myself, I'm going to listen about the job. Have more of an idea of, well, if it went really well, what would you want the outcome to be? If you want them to do something, it's very hard to walk and be like, hey, I'm Beth, will you hire me? Something has to happen between the hello and will you hire me? And that's the attitudes. Thinking about, well, if I want to get that person to do something, even if it's not hire me, even if it's just refer me or be willing to meet again or make a recommendation to someone, what do they need to know about me that they don't know? They have to believe something and have an attitude about me that they didn't have before we walked into this conversation. And then ultimately, if I want them to believe something, maybe there's information that I don't fully understand. I did some research on the website. I might think I know about this person or this job or this opportunity, but I need some answers. So what questions do I need answered? What do I want to find out from this person? So you're planning ahead. This is how you think about it before you even walk into the conversation. I'm going to sound old school. Whether you write it down on the back of a napkin or on your phone, and I resist saying your phone or something electronic because you're going to need it with you when you go in there. And I don't really encourage having electronics in front of you if you want to refer to it. So something written with a pen and a paper. Sounds very old-fashioned. So let's talk about this. If you were to meet with someone, and I'll go back to Brian, who was at the time interviewing for a public relations job as a junior job. It doesn't really matter what the job is. I want you to kind of think at a higher level of, what are some potential actions you can ask someone to do after you meet with them? If you're planning ahead for a meeting, anybody have any interviews coming up? Think about that. What would you want them to do? Yes. Okay. So the candidate's going to ask, what's the next steps? But what do you want the person that you're meeting with, what do you want them to actually do? Get up out of their chair and walk down the hall and do something for you that they weren't planning on. Get the hiring papers, okay? What else? I would like you to introduce me to someone else who could give me better information or tell me more. You can look at the curriculum, but you could also network with someone else besides the person who you're talking to. What else could that person do? I saw some other hands. No other? Yeah. So they could review everything that just happened. Do they have to get out of their chair to go do that? They could have a discussion with someone else. So that part I like. So reviewing it with you is not as much of an action as them actually going to talk to someone else and say, I just met this candidate and we should really consider this person. So that's a good one, yes. Right, that's a great point. So even as a candidate to say, well, I'm really interested, I'd love to see the facility, would you, even if someone like coerces you a little bit into giving the tour and maybe you were not 100%, they could ask you for that. They could ask you. So let me give you some of the ideas because you're on target. So potentially, if it's the right timing, hire me. But if you're just meeting someone for the first time, that's not always appropriate. It could be, well, can you introduce me to the hiring manager? Let me move this out of the way. Will you at least, get on the phone and speak with my references? Can you introduce me to another employee who's doing the job that I'm interviewing for? Or at minimally, can we at least meet again? I like that one because if the person's like, look, you seem like a great candidate, but we really don't have anything. We're really not in a great space right now. We're downsizing. Just every negative possible response. This person could be a mentor for you or someone that to stay in touch with because the people that follow up and stay in touch are the ones who tend to have a better chance of getting a job. So just having an idea, you don't have to do them all. You only have to get one accomplished. But you have to have something that you're aiming for that you want to ask them for by the end of the conversation. Yes? So you're another plant in the audience who helps me with my material. It's about to come. Yes, but we're going to get to that. Yeah, so that's actually a question, or you want to seek an answer, and that leads you to having a better thing to ask for at the end. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So those are some actions. Well, if they're going to do any of those things, give me an example, and we'll go back to PR. If you want to get a PR job, what do you think someone would have to believe about you in order to take on that type of job? Yes. You're credible, sociable, good communication skills, people person, outgoing, creative, honest. Okay. What? Persuasive. Highly intuitive. And how would you know if someone actually believed all the things that you just said? How do you know if they actually believed you? If you say, I'm creative, I'm intuitive, I'm efficient, I'm technologically savvy, how do you know that they actually believe you? How do you know you're convincing them? Just because you say it. Just by asking more questions. Okay. What's another way you'd know? Tone of voice. So you can bring a portfolio of the work that you've done, so you're actually proving that you have a skill and demonstrating that you have the ability. Any other ways that you would, how do you know that they're believing what you're telling them? Possibly, but you're still making an assumption that they're liking what you said. So I'm going to just give you the answer. So here's how I wrote some ideas of what attitudes someone might have about someone who's interviewing for a PR job. And I wrote it in quotations for a reason. Because you need to be so compelling in explaining yourself and your skills that the interviewer is going to almost say it back to you. They'll be like, wow, based on what you shared with me, I can see how you're really technologically savvy and you know how to improve the number of clicks on the website and get more people to tweet. I think that can be valuable. It's almost where you're hearing the words coming out of their mouth. So you were so compelling that they're actually saying it back to you. That's how you know. And the other way of know is you have to ask. At some point, you have to share, say, you know, I think I understand what your needs are and I can really solve your problems. Or I really think I'd be a good fit. Would you agree? Oh, that's scary. Has anyone ever done that? Has anyone ever asked an interview if they actually agreed with what they were telling them? That's terrifying, right? Because what if they say no? What if they say no? Okay, that's a great question. I'm going to answer that, and I have like 4 Q&A sessions, and I'm going to answer how often you should follow up, but not to the point where they're annoyed. But not every day. I'm not saying you did it either. I will get to that. I will get to that about how often to follow up. What's that? Yeah. Yeah. You do. But there have anyone ever yesed them and gave them really positive body language and then not get the job? I mean, I've been a hiring manager and be like, oh, you seem great. And then they walk out, I'm like, no, there's no way. So sometimes people don't want to tell you the truth. Sometimes the only way to find out the truth is you have to ask. You have to say, you know, based on what I shared with you, you know, let me just recap. I'm really technologically savvy. I understand how to be really creative. I have strong writing skills. I know how to write PR campaigns. I know how to work with clients. Do you think I'd be a good fit? Now, here's 2 scenarios. One, they say, yeah, I based on what you shared with me, I think that would be a great fit. The other one would be like, you know what, you seem like a great candidate, but I'm not sure this is the right fit. And this is usually your only chance to overcome the objection. And you say, well, can you tell me what's missing? What is it that I don't have? I'm trying to learn. I'm just out of school, and I really am interested in this job. Is there some kind of credential that you're looking for that you haven't seen? Because this could be your only time to get that answer before the silence goes on the response when they don't call back. And a lot of times they will tell you. They could say, you know what? I'm looking at graduate students. So some things you can fix and some things you can't. All right, I only have an undergraduate degree. I can't fix that. Or, you know what? I really want someone who works specifically on doing digital campaigns for Facebook. You know, in Brian's case, but like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. That's what I did for this other client, so-and-so. So sometimes you have the chance to come back and explain something that you might have not explained. But this is a pretty critical point in the conversation that you need to be able to really clear about what skills you have. This has come back to the skills and why you think it would be beneficial, but also testing, are they buying what you're selling? Okay? And then the last piece is, I want to make sure I ask some really good questions that I cannot find the answers to on the website. These are thoughtful, insightful. What do I need to understand about this job and this opportunity that I don't know? And I'm not going to find it in the website. And it's not about how many locations and what are the hours. These are the kinds of questions that will give you so much insight as to what the business, how do you measure your success? That's probably my favorite question. How would you measure my success? Because now you start to know what's important to them. What qualities would help someone be successful in this role? What did the previous person do? Why were they successful or not? What are the challenges that you're facing? Forget about me for a minute. What do you worry? Ask the employer, what do you worry about? Let me tell you, you'll get a real good view about what the problems are in the company if you ask somebody that. Because they're ready to unload. They're so happy you asked. Does that make sense? He's laughing over here. Right, it's like, let me tell you. So here's the process. When you think and plan ahead, you write it down in this order. You plan top down. I'll kind of show you the next slide. And those are all you plan top down. So first you think about the actions. What do you want them to do or believe about you? And then what do you need to know? But when you are in the conversation, and this is what the gentleman in the back was saying about, well, if I ask really good questions, then I know how to say certain things or ask who the hiring manager is. You're going to ask your questions first to get your answers. Then you tell, and you're going to have conversation, you're going to get information back and forth. Then you tell them about your skills and why they should believe certain things about you. And then if they agree that you have those right skills, then it's really easy to say, well, based on that, you know, will you introduce me to someone? Will you give me a tour? Can you talk to me about the hiring, introduce me to the hiring manager? Will you hire me for this job? So I kind of just talked about how you think about it ahead of time, but you execute in reverse. Kind of just, I know it might be a lot to take in. Any questions about that thought concept? Anyone go into meetings this structured or this thinking this way? Yes, sir. Sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that is an important question. I think that isn't. It goes back to, so tell me why you have this opening. Are you growing? Or did something happen? What happened to the last person who was in? I absolutely think that's a good question to ask. Because you need to now be in control of making some decisions. It's not, it's not just, please hire me. It's okay. It seems kind of interesting, but maybe it's too good to be true. Or something doesn't seem right. Maybe there's a reason why there's an opening, and I don't know if I really want this. Yeah. Yes. You do need to be humble and respectful in how you ask it, and you have to get a sense of reading the person, but you need to ask these questions and just say, I hope you don't mind, I have a few questions to ask. Could you just tell me a little bit about this? Or, you know, sometimes the people don't know the answers, or they're not in high enough a position to give you a good answer. Be like, oh, I'd love to understand more about that. Is there someone you can introduce me to who could answer this question for me? So it could just lead you in other ways. Yes, sir. I think you make a great point, and especially on the part about exuding confidence. I really believe like you fake it till you make it, and that even there's this fear factor that you're afraid, and it's intimidating, and especially if you go in an interview and it's 2-on-1, 3-on-1, 4-on-1. Sometimes they're testing that. Testing doesn't. You could have all the right answers, but if you're cowering because you're just afraid about how they're doing it, and that comes with practice. That comes with practice. Yeah, I think it's a great point, and it makes you seem desirable. So even if you don't have other offers, it makes it seem like you do. So, which is a great point. Yes. That's a great question. That takes some maturity and experience in the market to ask that. But I agree. I think it's a fantastic question. Yes. You're leading into the next part of my closing part of the talk, and I'm going to answer that. Give me 30 seconds. Okay. So this is kind of the idea about kind of the two concepts of having a strategy. I know I'm kind of over at this point, so let me kind of close up, and I will cover that real quickly, and then having a plan. So I think because we're over, I was going to ask if anybody had an upcoming interview. I don't think we have time for that. I was going to do a meeting plan with you, but if anyone wants to call me after and talk about it, I'm happy to do that. So I just wanted to do some Q&A. So what's up in the upper right-hand corner? How often should I follow up? I'm like a psychic. How did I know that question was going to be asked? So here's my opinion about follow-up. It's really, really important. 24 to 48 hours after you meet somebody. An email, not a text. Handwritten letters are great, but must be an email as well because it goes slowly and they want to see that you're responsive. And in your thank you note, it should be a recap of it's not just thank you, it's thank you so much for taking the time. I really enjoyed learning this about you. This is very interesting to me. As discussed, I have these skills. You are recapping for them why you are a good fit. And then you're going to say, I will follow up with you next week on Monday or whatever the next day is. I will give you a call at this time to discuss the next steps. Be precise. You're going to call within a week later. You're also going to email. So I like the 1 week intervals is kind of my rule of thumb, is that from that point, every 7 days, you're going to call and email on the same day. And I think just the follow-up. And this is the problem. So a lot of students say, well, I followed up. How many times? I sent them one email, and I never heard back. Did you send another one? No. So there's a philosophy, like a numbers game almost, even in sales, that sometimes people don't respond after the third, fourth, or fifth communication. But typically after the fifth, they respond one way or another. It's kind of like a sales thinking, sales methodology. So persistence is really, really important. Don't give up. Just because they didn't respond doesn't mean they didn't look at it and that they're not interested. Sometimes it's a test. Some employers like to see how much you want it. And has nothing to do. They have absolutely plenty of time during the day to respond to you. They want to see how many times you will follow up and see if you really want the job. And it's kind of a test in the process. You may not realize that. Does that answer your question about follow-up? Any other preference of which one I should answer? Job fair? Okay, here's my quick advice about the job fair. It is overwhelming. You need to get the list of employers ahead of time. You need to pick 5 to 7. Now, I don't know about Keene. Different schools have different volume of kids who attend. The lines can be very, very long. I don't know how many hours you have. People are juggling in between class. Pick 5 to 7 employers that you are really interested in. You're going to research them. You're going to look up what the latest stock price is. You're going to figure out who the CEO is. And you're going to decide what's on their website that's really interesting to you and why do you want to work there. And you need to have that written down, like prepared. So you can't have the same canned speech for every employer because they're all a little different. And then you need to have the 3 things you want to tell them about yourselves, with your core skills. I really want to work here because I'm really good at analyzing things. I think I'd be able to really help you in this department, and I'm really interested in learning more. You have to have your pitch down, and it's customized. But if you only have to do it for 5 to 7, I highly recommend writing it or typing it, and you have it in your portfolio, like underneath your resume. You can review it while you're waiting online to meet them, because you only have about a minute or so to really give your little talk, and then you're going to ask questions. They're going to say a few things, and they'll say, "Great meeting with you. I got to talk to the next person." So you cannot wing career affairs. That's the, I think, misnomer. I'll just go in, I'll walk around. I can't tell you how many students have been like, "Did you go to the career fair?" "Yeah, I went in, I walked around. There was a lot of people online, and I just walked right out," because it was so intimidating. And I didn't know what to say, and I didn't want to wait online. I didn't know what to do. So you can be in control of that process. You just have to think about it ahead of time. And you must get someone's name or business card to follow up. Does that answer the job fair question? Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Multiple copies of your resume, pen, pad, in a portfolio. They sell them at the bookstore. Well, you're lucky. But you have to know what you're talking about. Yes, sir. If you can't answer the question, yeah. Right. What do you know about us? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, 100%. There's this thing called Google. Um, I mean, literally, it's at like your fingertip. You could be standing online and like figure, but you have to do it before you get to the person. Great point. Thank you. All right. I'll open at any question. I put these up here, but I'm at the end. Oh, I have one last thing, actually. This is for the mentors. Okay. How do you help your mentee? This is for you. So, and this is a lot where I get a lot of questions from parents. So what can I do? Kid won't listen to me and all those things. So help them figure out what they're good at. Sometimes it's hard yourself to kind of see it. It's hard to see all these great things that you're good at. Help them identify it. Totally supportive of making introductions to colleagues and friends and people that could help them, but only if they are prepared for the conversation. So help them with that preparation. And the last piece is about, practice mock interviews. Ask the hard questions. Even just speaking clearly, trying not to say and getting the words out. It's nothing like when you read it on paper versus saying it out loud. Record yourself on the little voice memo on your iPhone or video yourself. Just practice. And that is the presentation. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. I know I'm way over what we initially talked about, but you guys were so interactive, and I really, really appreciate it. And I'll be around. I have some materials up front if you want to take them as well. I also have some feedback forms. If you'd be so kind to help me as I do this, helping me improve, just give me some feedback. If you want to connect further, I would really appreciate it. So thank you. So I don't know, John, do we have time for a few questions or you want to wrap it up? Okay. That's fine. I apologize. We're over. And so if you want to, feel free. I have my cards on the table. If you want to email me a few questions, happy to address it any way I can. Thank you so much for all the time and attention. You're great audience. Thank you.